Hey, join us this Sunday at the North Heights Church of Christ. We are beginning our 2019 theme for this year. Last year we had a great theme. We talked about things that concern our life in Christ. And this year we're looking at things that are in spirit and in truth. And that's from the book of John.
Yeah, Jesus tells the woman at the well in John chapter 4 that true worshipers worship in spirit and in truth. And we're going to really focus in on that this year because it's not just about having the right attitude or the right feelings when we serve God or worship Him, but it's also about having the right truth, the right doctrine, the right authentic, real worship towards Him. So we're going to be focusing on both of those things, just like what Jesus says right there, spirit and in truth. So we're going to try to be a people that are spiritual people, but also a people that are truthful or genuine or real or authentic. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really excited about that. This is a great church to be a part of, but this concept is not something that's just now coming about in our own minds. This is not something that just came about, in the last 100 years. This is an old concept.
Yeah, in fact, it's an Old Testament concept. The idea that God demands His people to do the right things in the right way goes back to the beginning of God's relationship with man. As a matter of fact, you can go back to a specific time in the Old Testament when the northern kingdom of Israel was enamored with idolatry and with paganism. And they would have all kinds of false worship with those other gods, but they would then try to worship God, Jehovah, the way Jehovah wanted them to. And so they would offer their lambs, they would offer their peace offerings and their burnt offerings, while also going over here and offering sometimes child sacrifices to their false gods. And they thought they could straddle the fence and play it both ways and they would be fine with everyone. And God says that is not the way it's done. In fact, God sends His prophet Hosea to deliver that exact message. Hosea 6:6, the prophet says on behalf of God, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. In other words, God is telling His people that I would rather you have a heart that is merciful and loving and godly and not worry about the sacrifice just yet, because God knows that if your heart is right, truly right, the proper worship will follow. That if you have the spirit of a person correct, that if your attitude is in tune with God, the truth will naturally come. And if you're not doing the truth, it's because your heart is not right. And if your heart is not right, you won't do the truth. And so Hosea makes that point very clear. But you know what? It's not just Hosea. There's another prophet who speaks to God's people who had the same problem, and that's the prophet Amos. And in Amos chapter 5 verse 21, God says to the people, I despise your feast days and will not smell in your solemn assemblies. Here are God's people having these huge festivals in honor of God and His relationship with them. And God says, I'm sick of it. Here's a people who would offer up incense to God and they would offer up worship to God. And God says, I'm tired of smelling it. I don't want to see your sacrifices. I don't want to smell your incense, because He knows their heart is not right. And you look at verse 22 of Amos chapter 5. God says, you offer me burnt offerings and meat offerings, and I will not accept them, nor will I accept your peace offerings from the fatted beasts. These Israelites were following the boxes they were checking. They were going down the list and doing the specific things. And if you confronted them on not being a faithful follower of God, they would say, what's the problem? We're doing the things. We're checking the boxes. We're offering the burnt offerings and the meat offerings and the peace offerings. And Amos would say, yeah, but your heart is not right. You've got truth only in an abstract sense. If you don't have spirit, the truth becomes irrelevant, which is why he said what he said in Hosea. Look at Amos 5 verse 23. God says, take away the noise of your songs. I don't want to hear your singing. Now imagine the preacher telling the congregation, God is sick of your singing. And it's not because you're out of tune. It's not because you can't keep up with the song leader. It's just because your heart is not right. There are too many of my brethren who think they can sit in the pew, they can sing the songs, they can say the prayers, they can watch the preacher talk for 20 minutes, punch their ticket, go home, and because they sat on the pew, that they have done their due diligence to serve God. God says right here in black, white, and red, I do not accept that worship. Now someone else can come along and say, well, I don't necessarily care so much about what I sing or what I pray or what kind of preaching I hear, because my heart is right with God. What Amos is saying here, the opposite is also true. That if you have the right heart but not the right doctrine, you're still not pleasing God. I imagine the Samaritans in John 4 were very sincere in their worship. They wanted to do right by the all-powerful Creator that they looked up and saw in the sky. And yet they weren't doing the right things, and so they were not right with God. You can have the right heart all day long, but if you're not following God His way, you're basically worshiping yourself. I mean, imagine telling God, I'm going to offer worship that you don't want, that you've said not to worship, but you'll take it anyway because you'll just do whatever you want. I'll just do whatever I want and you'll accept it because my heart feels like it's good. I feel satisfied in it. I feel content. I got a lot out of it, even though it's not what you wanted. Well, who are you worshiping? You're worshiping the God of self-satisfaction. You're not worshiping God. Jehovah wants what Jehovah wants, and He wants your heart to belong to Him so that your actions will follow suit. And so that's what we're going to be talking about throughout the entire year. There's a lot that we can do with this text. So I hope that you're excited. I hope that you are buckled in and ready to go, because as your preachers, we are going to challenge you. We are going to encourage you. We are also going to step on your toes and each other's toes as we go through the year.
Yeah, and that's what I want really out of my preacher, out of my church families. I want to be challenged. I want to be encouraged. And so that's exactly what we're going to do here at the North Heights Church of Christ. Really, this church is a strong church. We've got great things that are going on, and you would want to be a part of this. It would really do you good to be a part of this church and be a part of what we are doing, because we're going to be doing things in spirit and in truth.
I hope that you're excited about what's coming up this year. It's going to be great. We're excited, and I hope that you are as well. Get plugged in and find a place where you can be that missing piece that helps this congregation be even better than it's ever been before. God bless you. See you Sunday.